Hi, good afternoon and welcome to the Sustainability Show. And this very warm afternoon in Hertfordshire. Are we here? Are you there, Tim?
Yeah, I'm here. It's also warm, probably for the first time this year in Wales.
For me, a little bit too warm. I'm not keen on it being quite so warm, but still, never mind. So I've brought with me today some ingredients to have a go at demonstrating how you can make your own cleaning products. And so I think it's the sort of things that we perhaps would like to introduce a bit to the shows, ways that you can do things for yourself at home easily, so anyone can do them and make life a little bit more self-sufficient, let's say. Have you got things that you do yourself, Tim?
Only my homemade slug traps at the moment.
And how are they doing?
Well, we're in between. I've got to make some more now, as we rounded up a load of slugs about 2 weeks ago. So I've left it to see whether any slug trails come back, and it certainly seems to have cut down on them.
Excellent.
So we'll give them another go. We'll wait for them to start sort of venturing in again, then we'll have another round.
Have you made the traps yourself?
Yeah, that's all you need is a empty plastic bottle, some gaffer tape, and some tins of very cheap beer.
And how do you do that?
Maybe I'll show you how to do it on a different show, perhaps, because I can actually demonstrate it if I have the bits and pieces together.
That would be good. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know that they've used them quite a bit around the allotment. Certain people have used them. My own experience means that you need quite a few of them to work, but they do work. They're quite successful. Yeah,
the beer that you use is actually quite important. If you get the wrong beer, you won't get any slugs at all.
Really?
Yeah, and interestingly, what I've found is it's the cheap beer that they seem to go for. So there's no need to shell out on expensive sort of specialist beer or something. Just go for the cheap supermarket stuff. There seems to be something about cheap beer that they enjoy.
All right, perhaps more sugary or something?
Probably cheaper ingredients, I suppose, but I mean, I would guess the supermarket beer is kind of weaker than some of the other beers.
Strange, isn't it? But there you go. Yeah, I must admit I haven't used that myself. I use raised beds and I've got sand edging. It doesn't keep them off, I have to say, but I do pick them off myself. But it's just something I've seriously thought about using, and I do know other people who use it. It's a very great effect, so seem to work quite well.
Yeah, at the moment we're having a plague of them because we've gone, I think it's 2 or 3 winters in a row now where we haven't had enough frost to kill them off.
Very much. I mean, they're certainly all over my allotment, but I haven't bothered to try growing cabbages this year. So they haven't really bothered the crops that much, although they do eat a few leaves. It's not been, if you've got a few slugs eating a few potato leaves, it's not the end of the world, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, I'm having pretty much a fallow year this year. I'm just letting everything die back, but I've got a few pots. So I've tried using copper tape around the pots to try and keep them off. And it's sort of semi-effective, I suppose. I mean, 1 or 2 slugs have clearly got in there and had some of the leaves, but it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be.
Well, I've got a lot of fruit bushes on my plot, so that, if you get a few slugs on it, it's not really the end of the world. Strawberries they have pretty much devastated, I have to say. They got a good deal more of them than I did. But the rest of the crops I haven't been too worried about.
Yeah, I've got a hazel sapling that's grown in the middle of a bush I've got. So I'm going to try and extricate it from where it is and see if I can plant it somewhere where I might actually be able to get at the nuts.
That would be good, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's an offshoot of a hazel tree I've got at the back of the plot. But it's the one at the back of the plot the squirrels always have the nuts off before you get anywhere near them.
Yes, to be successful, you really have to net them, I think. And of course, you also have the worms get in quite early on too. So have to keep the moths and stuff off as well.
Oh, no, I haven't got any ways of trapping moths yet. We'll have to figure out how to do that later.
Yes, again, there are people have come up with quite novel ideas of putting double-sided tape around little, almost look like bird tables, and hang them in the trees, and or cover them with pheromones that give off, you know, certain scents to attract certain insects, depending on what it is you're trying to track.
Yeah, now the one somebody was telling me, when was that, last weekend, which was to do with my tomatoes, where they were suggesting growing marigolds in amongst the tomatoes. Apparently the marigolds attract all of the bugs that would otherwise go on the tomatoes.
I have used that in the past myself, and I have to say they do certainly attract black fly, and not quite so sure on the white fly. That's been what's devastated my tomatoes this year, the ones in the greenhouse anyway. But some of them seem to have attracted them more than others, so I've just kind of sacrificed a few for the other ones that have come up okay.
Yeah, so no, I mean, this year I think it's going to be a quiet year for me, I think. I mean, I've got, as I say, I've got a few pots with peas in them. I've got my couple of tomatoes growing in my porch, and we've got a couple of potato plants, and that's it. But we'll see how it goes.
So you'll have a few bits, even though you can't call yourself self-sufficient.
Well, no, I mean, if I was relying on growing what I'm growing to feed myself, I'd be dead within a week.
But I can't say that we'd be that self-sufficient, but I have been in the past, but we probably have enough potatoes. We probably have just about enough peas and beans for a few months. Certainly not all year. Certainly the strawberries have been rather devastated by the slugs this year, although last year I had loads, and I was able to freeze lots, so just about coming to the end of them now, which is even past when the strawberries should have come in, but because we didn't get so many this time. But I've got plenty of black currants, and raspberries are coming on. I've got autumn raspberries. They're just starting to come into being. Plenty of gooseberries, but self-sufficient, not really. Anyway, I've brought a little sample of things with me today that I'd like to show you how to make your own cleaning products. Today I'm going to demonstrate to you how to make some vinegar-based product that I find quite useful. Vinegars can be used for all kinds of cleaning things. It's antibacterial in itself. You can use it just on a cloth to wipe over your kitchen surface if you wish to, clean up the bacterial stuff that kills pretty much everything. Just a bit like that commercial version that says 99.9% of bacteria. I'm not quite sure vinegar's quite that good, but it's not far off. And I like to scent mine, so to speak, with some rosemary and lemon, because I think boring old straight vinegar isn't particularly nice smelling in and of itself. Fresh and bright, but I like to use these, and also because lemon in particular is used in quite a lot of the eco-friendly cleaning products, because in the skin is a product which you see it comes up as a limonene usually in most cleaning products around, and it's a very effective solvent. Also in orange skins, actually, probably even more so, in fact. The solvent in orange skins used quite a lot in carpet cleaners and the like. And I'm also going to put some rosemary in. This rosemary I've got here is a creeping version that I've got in my garden, but any standard straight up rosemary does the same job. So we'll have a crack at making some of our own. First of all, you need somebody to put it in. Clear glass jar is particularly useful, but if you're going to put vinegar in, you do need to be careful. If you've got metal lids, you either have to have a plastic liner, or you need to put a bit of cling film over your jar before you put the lid on, because it will corrode. Although it's not in there for too long, so it shouldn't be too much of a problem. what we're going to do is snip up the rosemary and plonk it in. You don't have to be careful about this in any shape or form. Just it's the leaves really that you want, not too much of the sticky stuff, because that's where you're going to get the what am I trying to say? The oils and things that you want in your vinegar. And we're going to stuff this jar up full, and then we're going to put in some lemon. And again, you just want the skin. You really want to dilute your vinegar. You really need dry product in there, leaves and skin. I'm going to put this over there for a minute. Hope you can still see me. So I can't see the screen, so I hope you can see me. I'm just going to put just the skin. So I'm going to squeeze the juice out because you don't want that. You can use this for something else.
Yeah, let's get some gin out.
Yeah, and your gin or if you've got a summer cold, good with some honey and some hot water for a nice lemon and honey drink. Or, I can think of a million things I would use it for. Lemon meringue pies and all kinds of things. But, oops, leave that over there so you can see me. I'm just going to take all this stuff off. You don't want that. You just want just the skin. Chop it up into little bits. Like so. Plonk them in. Again, they don't have to be clever or pretty or careful about it. Just need to make sure that you don't dilute your vinegar too much. There we go. You need about, for a jar this size, which is an old pickle jar, which is about a pint and a half, I guess. You need about 3 lemons and quite a decent sized bunch of rosemary. Rather than spend hours at it, I've got one here that I made earlier. So we're going to fill this one up just the same amount to the top with all your lemon and your rosemary, and then pour in the top some pickling vinegar. You do need, really, for cleaning products, you need the clear, high-strength pickling vinegar. They're about 5 or 6% acid, as opposed to the stuff you put on your fish and chips, which is only usually about 3. You want it good and strong. Sorry, I haven't, in my makeshift kitchen here, I haven't got the the clean-up team sorting me out behind the scenes. So we fill our jar up with the lemon and the rosemary, and then we fill it up to the top with clear vinegar, pickling vinegar, and leave it in the sunshine for about 2 weeks, and it'll just gradually take the nice volatile acids and oils out and put it into your vinegar. So then, once it's been there a couple of weeks, just going to strain it through a bit of cloth. Again, doesn't have to be terribly careful, except obviously you want it clean. Through a sieve into just something to catch it with. Try not to spill it all over Chris's front room. I can't get the top. Oh gosh. Excuse me, a little bit of air required. Don't do that at home, we. Okay. Good strong rosemary smell there. So I'm just going to sieve it out so that we keep the liquid and leave behind the rosemary. You could potentially, I guess, do this a second time. You could put a bit more vinegar in the top and just keep it for a little bit longer. So you're going to collect a bit more out of it. Probably would do twice. Doubt whether it'd do any more than that. So we can use this. This one's got a topping. Yeah, I won't bother with that. But anyway, you get the drift. You can fill it up again, pop it in the sun. You'd probably get enough out of it over a couple of takes. Because actually it's the vinegar that's doing the job, really. The rosemary and the lemon are making it smell much nicer. And rosemary in particular, and lots of herbs actually have got antibacterial action themselves. So it's quite handy to use that. Sorry. Right, where am I going? Now I need, well, I can put it in a spray bottle, or you can put it in a just an ordinary bottle, depending on what you want to use it for. I did have a sieve. Oh, there it is. Can't find my funnel. So you've got a slightly orangey green liquid to utilize for your cleaning. So what do you use it for? You've got this fantastic lemon and rosemary vinegar. Oh. If you just put a spoonful in a bucket of hot water, it's great for doing floors and kitchen surfaces and walls. Anything really that you need to have a bit of a little bit of antibacterial help with. Just neat, straight as it comes out of the bottle. On if you put it in a pot and soak your shower heads in overnight, you know, that'll help to loosen up all that lime scale. You can use it in your kettle. Again, about a cupful roughly of vinegar mix and a cupful of water. Boil it up in the kettle, that take the lime scale off. So it's great for doing all of those things that you would otherwise spend a great deal of money on descalers. Most of us seem to have lots and lots and lots of cleaners in the cupboard, but actually you really don't need that many. We really have 4 things at our disposal. We've got our time, how long you leave something. We've got how much you agitate or scrub something. You've got the chemical thing, which is mostly it's about either an acid or an alkali, depending on what the stain is created by. You want its opposite number to pull it out. Or we have temperature, so you can heat something up or cool it down, and one of those 4 will generally get most things clean. And so if you leave the chemical bit to last and use the other things first, you know, we really don't need as many cleaning products as we use, most of us. Anyway, do you have a go? Tell me how you get on. Thank you. Or spray it straight in a spray bottle. If you mix again, sorry, I should have said a couple of spoonfuls in a spray bottle with some water. Great for the windows. Thank you.
So that's going to be a lot cheaper than shelling out a lot of money for a branded sort of set of household cleaners then.
I would think so, because what do these cost me? 50p or something like. The rosemary came out the garden. I don't have lemon tree in my garden. It's just about possible to grow them here with a bit of help in a sun lounge or orangery, as they used in the Victorian era. But I do know people in this area who are growing lemon trees and are successful. They're getting fruit coming off them. So it's perfectly possible, but you have to shield them a bit in the winter.
Yeah, I mean, for the time being, I suppose I think the last time I bought lemons would have been probably 4 for £1. So it's not going to set you back a huge amount. I did have them for the sake of the lemon and honey cold remedy, which I always put a little bit of sage in with it.
Right, yes.
Because sage has an anti-inflammatory property to it, because it just kind of takes the edge off the sort of headachy sense you get with a cold. But basically, I think the honey acts, I mean, it's the same property as when you buy an expensive cold and cough remedy. In fact, some of them, if you have a look, they actually use honey. But the honey will coat the back of your nose and your throat. So it just takes the edge when you're eating or drinking something. It gets rid of that sore throat sensation. The lemon, because of the vitamin C, sort of helps your system deal with the cold. Plus the sage for its anti-inflammatory properties. Yeah, and again, it's a very cheap way of doing something that otherwise you could spend a lot of money on, sort of buying expensive remedies.
It's not just the expenses either. We know where, if we've grown those things that they've come out of our garden, we haven't got things on them that we don't want on them. The problem with purchasing things that you don't perhaps know the background of is, in order to keep things long enough. I know if I pick things out of my garden and put them in the fridge, I have to use them up pretty quickly, within a day or two. They don't keep. But if I buy the same product from Sainsbury's, it'll last in my fridge a couple of weeks. So you wonder sometimes what it is they've done to it before you get home. And largely, to be fair, the packaging does play a part. We put fruit and vegetables in particular into plastic packaging, which is then filled up with carbon dioxide. So that helps keep them. And carbon dioxide in itself is not really a poison or a problem. So it is quite important part of it. But equally, there are plenty of organic stuff out there too. But we do have to watch out. We've turned our head away and let it happen. But I've always felt a little bit uneasy about the fact that we consider that organic is better than everything else. And without really questioning why or how that might be. And in general, I do agree. But the problem is, if you're selling organic products and you want it to taste better so that your customer thinks, this is great, I'm really going to do this, I'm going to only eat organic, what they'll have a tendency to do is to breed plants with more and more sugar in them and less minerals in them, because the minerals taste bitter and the sugar makes them taste nice and sweet. And you see it all over the supermarkets now, the sweetest tomatoes, the sweetest whatever. But do we actually want them to be sweeter? Because actually that means that we're breeding all those minerals that we're actually eating it for. Why do we bother to eat a full variety of fruit and veg? Because we need the vitamin and mineral content from them. Inclined to think that nowadays that 5 a day isn't enough. It's more like 9 a day to get enough of all of those vitamins and minerals that we need for our well-being.
Yeah, I think 5 a day was one of these compromise figures that they came out with just because they were fairly aware that people weren't eating anything like it. I was involved with the Welsh government with some of their health initiatives back a decade ago, where you were struggling to get people to eat 2 portions of vegetables in a day. So the thought was, well, 5 a day might not get you all of the nutrients you need, but it was something that you might be able to encourage people towards. But you had families that would be living on burgers and pizzas and stuff, where just getting a vegetable in was a step forward. And of course there are parts of Wales, we have some of the lowest life expectancy in the whole of Europe.
Really?
Basically, if you look at, there's 2 counties, one is Merthyr, the other is Blaen y Gwent, those sort of neighbouring counties at the top end of the South Wales valleys. And basically they will figure in the sort of bottom 10 of just about every health indicator you can find. Certainly for the UK, and very often for Europe. So whether it's heart disease, cancer, mental illness, the whole raft of problems. You have, there's a measure called disability-free life expectancy, which is the amount of years you can be expected to go before you get some kind of disabling or serious illness. And I think the average for men is under 50.
Wow.
So life expectancy itself is down, but a lot of people are living for 15, 20 years at the end of their lives with serious disabilities. And of course, some of that is lifestyle. Some of it is education, some of it is just lack of access to a decent diet. One of the problems you have there is shops won't stock healthy foods because people don't buy them.
Catch-22. They want to buy them, they can't get them.
Yeah, I mean, it becomes that self-fulfilling prophecy sort of stuff that, yeah, because despite sort of supermarkets having access to huge quantities of food, at the end of the day, they're still fairly demand-driven.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so yes, they'll have some fruit and veg available. You know, and kind of there will be people that are buying it, but their inventory differences between sort of some of the lowest health areas and some of the best is quite a wide gap. Yeah, you don't necessarily see it when you go into the shop because you always see stuff on the shelves. But if you were to interrogate their computer systems to see which stores sell the most, then you'll find places like Oxfordshire will be some of the highest consumption of fruit and veg anywhere in the UK, whereas places like Merthyr and Bryan and Gwent will be some of the lowest.
I wonder why that is. Is it an expense thing, do you think?
I think some of it is cultural, some of it is educative, some of it is time, some of it is money. I mean, certainly for those people right at the bottom of the social ladder where you're eating out of food banks and stuff, you're going to be eating a lot more tinned food and a lot more processed food.
Just by its very nature. Mm.
Yeah, I mean, if you're living on benefits where you've perhaps got, you know, less than £10 a day to feed your family, you're much more likely to head for high carbohydrate foods. You know, so essentially getting the necessary calories in becomes more important than how you get the calories. You know, so again, a potato you'll eat rather than a carrot. Yeah, but bread instead of a potato and refined sugar instead of bread. Yeah, I mean, that's...
Potatoes and sweet potatoes are quite cheap commodities, along with onions and I suppose the basic stuff. That, you know, some of the greens can be a bit more expensive. Certainly, cauliflowers come up on the more expensive ratio because they take a long time to grow. But peas and beans aren't usually too expensive, are they?
No, but then equally, it's knowing what to do with them.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, as I mean, one of the things that was done, I think, back in the late 80s, maybe the early 90s, was they took home economics out of the curriculum. You know, so you've now got a generation of people that grew up never learning how to cook.
So if they didn't get it at home, they won't know.
Yeah, I mean, I remember, I mean, the area that I was in was mental health, where we were trying to encourage people to eat their 5 a day as a proxy for healthy eating. Mm. So, I mean, I won't mention the person's name, but somebody that was involved with us at the time had decided, yes, that sounded like a good idea. What could they do? So we gave them a printout that we had of various different foods that were good for mental health. So this person took them away, sort of went out and shopped for all of these things. And of course, what they said, you know, their realization once they got all this food home was they didn't actually have anything they could eat. Because all of it required some preparation and some cooking. Yeah. And this person just didn't know how to do that. Right. So basically, this was somebody that had been living out of their microwave for several years. That basically what they used to do when they were in work was they'd come home from work, put a ready meal in the microwave. Yeah, and that was their dinner. Suddenly they were being confronted with all of these raw vegetables and kind of uncooked meat and then being able to think through, well, what do I do with this stuff? Yeah, and how long does it take? You know, what you couldn't do was that coming home from work, put something in the microwave and have it ready within a matter of minutes. So again, it's that management of time thing that you have to do with it.
Although stir frying is pretty quick and most vegetables take, well, you can make a stir fry meal out of just about anything really, can't you?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I did afterwards was actually wrote a book. I mean, there's a book, you can get it on Amazon, called Food for Mood. One of the things that I put in the back of this book was a list of quick cooking recipes. So they're all healthy eating. They all contain foods that are good for mental health. But they're things that you can do. I mean, they can be ready within about 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And as you say, I mean, a stir fry is actually quicker to cook than something in the microwave. You know, so yes, it's doable. It's just, I think, so say part of it is just people don't know. I mean, there was a guy back when I was working doing the stuff with the Welsh government. There was a guy that was running a sort of teaching people how to cook using healthy ingredients, a project there up in the Upper Valleys.
Yeah.
Again, I mean, he was having spectacular results just because once people realized that it was easy to do, they started doing it. You know, but if you take somebody that's been rushed to look after the kids or whatever, where it's easier just to give them pizza or a burger, you know, if that person doesn't know how to cook healthy food from scratch, then they're not going to change.
No.
So yeah, the first thing to do is give somebody the knowledge to do it. Second thing to do is give them the skills. Third thing to do is give them the encouragement.
Yes, and you do have to change your taste a bit too, because I know that I live with somebody who's let's say been quite used to the chicken ding, and then I cook for him, and he's kind of like, oh. And not that he's ever complained, but if he is going to go out and buy for himself, he'll tend to buy a lot of processed food just because that's what he's used to. And it's taken a long time before he's now sort of 4 or 5 years, I guess, where he's now sort of saying, I don't like this much. Whereas previously that would have been his first choice. You know, it does, your taste change needs to happen as well.
I think one of the best things I did some years ago was gave up sugar. And basically I started, I mean, initially it was just giving up putting sugar in tea and on your breakfast. And, but then after that, I started tracking down different foods. So you read the nutritional information off the back. One of the problems is there's about 50 different names for sugar that they smuggle into food. So you get things like glucose, dextrose, sucrose, fructose. Yeah, they're all sugar. So you have to read, and look out for them. I mean, the one that's coming in from America that's nasty is refined corn sugar, which is actually sweeter than sugar and a lot more dangerous. Yeah, because I mean, that stuff is almost sort of type 2 diabetes in a jar.
Yeah. Yes. One of the things that's been noted among the beekeepers actually is that of America is that commercial beekeepers tend to take most of the honey off and then feed the bees back a sugar substitute, and over the winter they're expected to live off that. And there's been a lot of research by, I'm sorry, I can't remember the lady's name, on the fact that people were using corn syrup as a replacement instead of mixing up sugar with water.
Yes, which is unlikely to be that.
Especially if it's not so much when it's first freshly made, but if it's been carried around in a tanker in the warmth, it develops chemical which is referred to as HCT, I believe, and again, I'm afraid I can't remember what that is. I didn't take enough notice because I don't use corn syrup. But it was obviously very toxic to the bees. It's not quite so toxic to humans, but it's not good for us either. So it is quite a concern as to what are in these things, not necessarily because they were made with it in, but they develop over a period of time because they've been warmed. So
Yeah,
probably not good for us either.
Well, as I said, it's one to watch out for. I think it's not in too many foods in Europe at the moment. But it is something, I mean, if we get a trade deal with America, no doubt we'll be full of the stuff.
That's also a very big concern with the GMOs as well, isn't it? The genetically modified stuff, which is not really here yet.
No, I mean, I think you're unlikely now, if you have soybeans, you're unlikely to not have some genetically modified beans. I have a feeling tomatoes as well. But beyond that at the moment, and of course we have labeling rules, so if there are GMOs in food, they have to say so. Whereas, of course, in the States, nobody bothers.
Everything.
But no, going back to giving up sugar, I mean, I think for about a week or so you find it tricky because if you have a sweet tooth, everything tastes a bit sour and a bit bleh. But what I noticed quite quickly after is if you go back to eating anything sweet, you find it quite sickly.
Yes, I found the same. I did a similar thing myself. I must admit, it snuck back into my diet a bit, in at least in the form of chocolate. But find that one a little bit hard to give up permanently. But generally speaking, I'm quite lucky. I do have honey, so I have a natural sweetener I can use if I really want a bit of sweetness in particularly in stewed fruits and things. But we don't use a lot of sugar except for preserving, and of course it is a very effective preserver. You know, if you're wanting to keep things, jams and pickles and things, you need something. Vinegar, of course, is a great preserver, along with sugar and salt.
Yeah, salt water and smoking.
And smoking, yeah. Well, they just say that it's not good to have too much smoked food either. But I haven't quite worked out why that should be, but
I wonder whether there are carcinogens in the smoke. I wonder whether there are carcinogens in the smoke.
I think it's to do with carbon-free radicals that they're worried about. But I believe, I haven't really researched that one properly, but I do know the lass who works for me, who's Polish, is very keen on smoked food and eats an awful lot of it, and she says it's fairly prevalent among the Polish culture. So it'd be interesting to see if that's where they discovered the problems from.
I know my ex-wife was Ukrainian, and she used to eat a lot of salted fish. And she used to make it. I mean, you'd have a big jar of salt and just throw whole fish in, and just leave them out in the sun until they'd completely dried. I mean, I never touched the things, but she used to love them. So yeah, yes, again, salting. And it was when I traveled through Ukraine and Russia. I mean, it's going back in the late 1990s or early 1990s. A lot of salted food there, which I often wondered, because they had a very low life expectancy for a while. And I don't know how much of that, certainly they had problems with alcoholism and smoking as well. But I do wonder whether too much salt in the diet is a problem as well.
It's like everything else, though, isn't it? It's everything in moderation, including moderation, because large quantities of alcohol and large quantities of salt together are going to obviously have an effect on the blood pressure. But they're equally on a very cold climate, where they probably need a bit more than we do. But like everything else, excessive amounts of anything don't do you any good, do they?
No, I mean, in terms of food production, I mean, their agriculture was fantastic. Because it's that continental climate where they had a very hard winter, and that wipes out all of the bugs and the pests and stuff that you'd get. Then you get a fairly long growing season that is sort of through from sort of the end of March, beginning of April through to September. And both ends of the season are punctuated by really heavy rain. So it's not like here where you get a pick and mix every day. I remember being out there one year as right at the end of the season. The thunderstorms they had there were quite spectacular. Yeah, I mean, again, it's not like here. It's because you've got this rolling steppe, which is where the grain basket is. So you'd see fantastic, huge lightning storms. But yeah, I mean, their big thing was if you had land, you'd grow as much as you could across the growing season, then you'd preserve it going into the winter.
Yes, well, you've got to, haven't you? You've got to keep your food going through the rest of the year, or either that, or you've got to import a lot. So you've got to find it from somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, certainly the first time I traveled there, it was still the Soviet Union then. And of course, the shops were pretty empty. So people actually had to do a lot more of growing and preserving their own foods. I mean, I would guess you'd probably have to go back to the war or just afterwards here for a similar sort of situation. I guess some of those skills are coming back now, but a lot of them have been forgotten.
Yes, I think that's part of particularly the transition towns movement, isn't it? Reskilling. is quite an important part of their remit, insofar as, you know, if we do find ourselves with, you know, power shortages because of lack of fuel, how are we going to survive? And a lot of that is down to what skills have you got?
Yes, and it's always worth having a look around a kitchen and look at how many devices you've got that you've come to rely on that run on electricity or gas. In fact, I came across a guy who was saying, talking about the bushfires in Australia some years ago, where a lot of the energy supply to the houses got cut off by the fires. People actually struggled to cook. What they discovered was it's sort of this psychological block a lot of people have because everything has to be in context. That a lot of people struggle to cook food even though they had barbecues outside.
I was going to say, I should imagine every Australian house must have. Well, it's not,
well, perhaps not all of them, but
most
a lot of
would have a barbecue.
But what they found was, you know, literally people would be sat there going hungry because they couldn't cook food, and there was a perfectly serviceable barbecue outside. But because psychologically they weren't connecting that you could use the barbecue to cook pretty much anything, you know, so they sat there starving instead. Yeah, I suspect it's a similar thing here. I mean, if the gas and the electric went out, but you've got a barbecue, if you've got, you know, I mean, either some charcoal or if you need to get some wood, then you can cook.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what you're not going to be able to do is use the microwave or the blender or the kind of food processor. So you have to do it by hand.
That's one of the things I've wondered about myself, actually, because it's amazing how many electrical gadgets people have, isn't there? Like electrical tin openers and electrical squeezers, for instance, and electrical drills. And, you know, it's perfectly possible to drill holes with a hand drill, but you don't see people doing that very often. Equally, you can squeeze your juice easily enough in a little jug, and probably people still have those, but an awful lot have electrical machines which they put the vegetables through to chop up or whatever. And it is largely, isn't it, that which we're used to, not perhaps really thinking about the other things that we could do.
Well, I mean, part of it's the whole resilience thing is to have resilience involves duplication. So it's essentially, okay, if the electric went out, could I do that some other way? So even something as simple as an electric kettle, you know, which most of us use, the odds are that you're not going to have a kettle that you can put on a fire or a gas ring. I mean, you could do it with a saucepan, but it's not as efficient. Yeah, so okay, you do it on a saucepan as an emergency, and then you can at least get a cup of tea together. Yeah, but again, a lot of people would be lost if the electric went out for making a hot drink. Yeah, particularly if you've got an electric stove, actually, because then, you know, I mean, if the hob is electric as well, then barring putting your saucepan out on the barbecue, then you know, so again, that's, you know, a lot of that stuff you need to think through if you're going to be resilient. I mean, as is within limits. I mean, kind of, you know, as I've maintained, I don't buy into this idea that you fill your house up with 3 years worth of freeze-dried food. So I think that isn't going to work. The
American prepping idea, they call it, preparing for when life goes totally wrong.
Yeah, I mean, okay, I'm always trying to second guess what government would do faced with those kind of circumstances, but I imagine here we'd resurrect some form of rationing. You know, so essentially, yes, if you can get a few weeks worth of food in, particularly if you've got dried and tinned food, and then rotate it. So obviously you're using it, but you buy replacements. I would think the odds of somebody being able to keep more than 3 weeks worth and keep it so it's within its use by dates, and you know, that gets pretty tricky beyond about 3 weeks.
See lots of foods that will keep extended periods of time, let's say. For instance, I mean, most fruit and vegetables are only in season once a year. So if you want to eat apples all year round, you're only doing that because they're being preserved in some form or other. And we do. We can, generally speaking, go into any shop and buy an apple just about any time of year, but they're only available off the tree in the autumn. But they will keep quite well in a cool, dark place. You can keep your own if you have apples, in a shed.
Yeah.
So long as you're careful not to allow ones with damage on them in there, because as soon as one goes rotten, it'll tend to break down the ones around it. But equally so, commercially, they're doing the same sort of things. And of course, we are shipping them in from around the world as the seasons change around the world. We can collect these from them, which means that a lot of us don't actually even know what is in season at any one time, of course.
Well, I mean, the downside of that, of course, is it depends on keeping the global banking system going. So this is this idea that you get a contagion between one essential thing and another. But if for any reason the global economy crashes, then we almost overnight lose a lot of the food that we need. Equally, we're left with a lot of food that probably we can't eat because we grow for the world market as well. So you have all of those horrible fields of rapeseed across the south of England, which are of no benefit to you whatsoever if you're looking for something to eat. But of course, that's our export to the rest of the world in exchange for the food that comes in.
It's an interesting concept, because I think that we should be using far more rapeseed oil in particular for cooking in. It's healthier than olive oil, and many of the things that we consider to be so amazing. It's got a nice nutty flavour, and I would say that we should be using our own cold pressed rapeseed oil and a great deal cheaper, instead of buying lots of expensive this, that, the next things from around the world. But it's also an edible crop. You can eat just about any part of it if you so wish.
All right, flavour wise.
Well, it's I think it's got quite a nice nutty flavour. It's a bit like cabbage, really. It's part of the cabbage family, so. Or actually, probably not. It's probably part of the mustard family, but and also, it can be crushed to be used as part of the diesel oil process, which I guess is likely to happen in the future. Well,
I don't know. I mean, this idea of using our food to power somebody else's car is always a bit suspect. I know it's certainly one of the things they found in the US with the use of corn to make ethanol is it actually uses more energy than it gives you. So they had this ridiculous thing under George Bush, and it was largely a subsidy to corn farmers. But they brought in a law there that a certain percentage of diesel oil had to be from corn ethanol. So it actually, by the time you'd added in the amount of oil used in the tractors to grow the stuff and the lorries to get it back and forth and the refining process to actually turn it into a usable fuel, it was better off if you didn't do any of that and just saved the diesel that all of that used.
Yes, that doesn't make a lot of sense. Although it obviously is part of some of the other things that we do. I mean, ethanol is part, I believe, is produced as part of the distilling industry. In which case you can't use it for anything else. You might just as well use it for fuel.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's okay if it's a byproduct. But when it becomes the product, it becomes a problem because in addition, you're taking land that could have been used for food. So part of what you're doing is driving up the cost of food and kind of creating shortages somewhere. So essentially, were America growing more of its own food, then other parts of the world would have more food to live on, rather than having to sell their food into America. There's one of the things when you find famines around the world. So famously, the Ethiopian one back in the 1980s. At the time, Ethiopia was exporting a lot of cotton and a lot of coffee. So essentially, although they had a food shortage, it was as much an artificial creation because of the way their land was used as it was a weather event. And of course, it was because that country depended on its cotton exports to be able to bring in the money that it needed in order to run everything else. So all of these problems, when you look at it at a global level, I mean, there are always problems with using food for anything other than food. And I mean, certainly with 7.5 billion of us on the planet, and with global warming starting to eat into the most productive land areas, the need to use land for food is going to get all the more stronger as we go on.
Yes, and the skill to grow it as well. That's only held in the hands of very few at the moment.
Well, and there's a concern that young people aren't going into agriculture.
Well, they're not. When I trained in agriculture in my 20s, there were 8 of us on the course. And the following year, I think they closed it because it just wasn't viable to teach that small number.
Yes, and then the concern is that we lose a lot of skills that we then have to relearn at some point in the future, which I think is probably inevitable at some point.
Of course, people don't always necessarily have to be trained in agriculture to grow food. There's plenty of allotment holders out there, and some of them are particularly good at it.
Yes, I mean, I guess actually some form of market gardening might actually be as valid as sort of full-on agriculture.
Absolutely, 100% on that one. Particularly, I mean, around Australia now, where they've got a lot of problems with water consumption. I mean, almost every other small holding, or certainly people with a bit of groundwork, putting up aquaponics works in their gardens. Of course, they have a lot more sunshine than we do, so they don't necessarily have to do it inside like we would to be successful. But an awful lot of people are doing it because they're realizing that you don't lose, if you can keep that water in your system and not have to keep losing it, then it's a resource that's, in particular in the some more arid areas, that it's a real need. And I would say it's something we should be considering here. We shouldn't really be using lots and lots of water to irrigate when we don't need to. So certainly brought home to me this year in particular, since I started to grow in a greenhouse, just how much water you use to produce a crop.
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, it's not a problem this side of the UK.
No.
One of the things with living in Wales is you never have water shortages. I mean, actually, we had a bit of a shortage back in 1976 when we had the drought then. But I think quite often we'll see the southeast of England being put on hosepipe bans and stuff. Oh, yeah,
frequent, most years, in fact.
Yeah, it's very rare this side of the country to have that. Basically it rains that much over the winter and we catch a lot of it in the reservoirs. And actually a lot of the Welsh hills are still sort of like giant sponges. As you've got all of those upland moss areas that just absorb all of the water, then gradually trickle it out into the streams. So it is very rare for us to kind of get to the point where you've got to switch everything off. I mean, it's one of the reasons why I wouldn't consider moving in the event of things getting bad economically. Because I kind of figured, what's the one thing that you would struggle to live without? It's going to be water.
Water and food and shelter. They're the main basic things of life, aren't they?
Yes, I forget how long you can go without food for compared to how long you can go without water for. But if you're not drinking, then you're going to die fairly quickly. One of the things I did come across that I'd yet to try out, probably risky in current climates, was to purify water. If you take a pine branch and when you cut through it, you've got a layer of bark, then inside that there's a kind of hardwood layer, and through the middle is a soft wood, which is actually still live. I mean, it's slightly sticky. So if you get just that soft inner bit, make a plug with that, and then drain water through it. So put it in a tube and allow water to drip through. It will, or the claim is that it will kill 99% of whatever germs are in the water that you pass through it.
That probably is true, although there are less damaging to the tree ways in which you could do that, because obviously charcoal and sand will do a similar thing.
So will charcoal take the germs out as well?
I believe so, yes, that's why it's used. And there's also the fact that boiling will kill most things too. And I think they've been using a lot of solar stills in the African climate just allowing the water to come up, to be heated by the sun and to evaporate and then to collect.
Right. Okay.
Leaving the dirt behind. Certainly that gives you fairly pure water that way, because it's just the evaporated water.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'd rely on doing that in Wales.
Well, I think if you had it in a big enough means and you left it there all the time, so it was always doing it, so that you were collecting it, continuously when you've got sunshine. I guess it depends how much you use as well, and of course we don't really need it to be pure for lots of things that we do. No,
I mean, in the end it's only what you drink and what you use with cooking. Yes, I mean, it's one of those things that if you were designing a water system from scratch, you wouldn't design the one that we've got. Because we spend a lot of resource, a lot of energy on purifying water that we flush straight down the toilet again, or we use it for bathing in. None of which needs to be drinking quality. In fact, I think there are several countries I've visited over the years where you'll actually have a separate drinking water tap. So a lot of the water that you use is for washing in, and you have the one tap then that connects you into clean water.
Certainly where I used to live on the edges of Auckland City in New Zealand, not our own particular property, but there were a lot of properties that had been built up in the bush area, and they all collected their own water, all of them, off their own roof. It was rainwater, came straight into there, and that was used for 99% of all of the things within the house except for drinking. And in fact, some people even fitted themselves with purifiers and used their own water for drinking, which is, I don't really see any reason why you shouldn't, provided your system is clean. But obviously you then have to keep your roof clean and your tank clean if you were then going to use it for drinking, which you otherwise really need, provided your tank's cool. Most of them were either at least put on the cool side of the house, and quite often they were buried, big tanks that were buried in the ground, so that you didn't get the heat and light in there to start to grow bacteria in the first place. And of course you have to have the pump to bring it up, so there's pros and cons as whether you would do that or whether you just really wanted it a big tank. But if we had huge big tanks out. Trying to work out what they must have been. Gosh, thousands of litres they must have been, because they were huge. They were almost room size, 10 by 10 sort of, or most of them were rounded, but huge tanks, and they were filled from just rainwater in New Zealand. They don't have anything like the rain that Wales does, for instance.
Well, but that's the thing here. I mean, looking at the way the climate is changing, we seem to be going from where you just had sort of rainy days through to having sort of real cloud bursts, but then interspersed by a lot of dry weather. So, I mean, certainly for growing, it's worth having water butts and stuff to try to collect some of that downpour when it hits.
Oh, certainly. Absolutely, certainly, yeah. And then, as I say, using systems where you don't actually have to use as much water, where you're recirculating it, it's got to be a good thing.
Yes, I mean, I imagine certainly for the south and east of the UK, I can imagine that becoming something that you just have to do. If the climate is just going to continue on the trend that it's been on, then over this side of the country, because of the mountains that we've got facing the Atlantic, we'll get all of the rain. Every now and again, the south and the east of the country will get a real humdinger of a downpour, and it's going to need to collect as much of that as it can. So I mean, then starting to be water efficient sort of becomes a way forward, I think.
Absolutely. So we're running close towards the end of our program now. Are you going to bring us some slug baits next time?
I'll see if I can set something up. So the other one that I'll show everyone how to do at some point, if I can get a camera rigged up, and it isn't going to be immediately because I don't know how I'm going to do it. But I'll show you how to make soap one episode as well.
Sorry, how to make
soap.
Oh, soap. Yes, excellent.
So I think we did that a couple of years ago. I made a whole wodge of them and kind of gave them out to friends as a Christmas present.
Do you make it from scratch, actually from oil and lye?
Yeah, I had to use, I mean, the lye I've got as granules. So there is a way of making lye using hardwood ash.
Yes.
But it takes a long time, and the measurement is...
Yeah, it's a little bit, you have to be very careful with that, don't you, knowing the strength of it, what you actually have to use.
Yes, I mean, there are problems with the strength of it, so then you've got to, it's very trial and error in terms of getting the right amount of oil with it.
Yes.
So no, on balance, it's easier to have the lye pellets and just use those. But yes, I mean, you can sort of strain water through hardwood ash. That will give you some lye.
That's how it's originally made, wasn't it? And there's no doubt that it can be done. But I mean, I guess it's having the testing ability to be able to check its strength. So you obviously don't want to end up with caustic soap. No,
I mean, the problem then is you're much more likely to get a liquid soap than you are to get a hard soap. Which, okay, not a problem. But as you say, if it's still caustic, then it's going to burn everything as soon as you get your hands anywhere near it. So I say, in an emergency, if that's all I had, I would do it. But I think in the current climate, there's no need to take the risk.
I guess it's the same thing, though, it being able to test the strength of what you have so that you know what you're using. But anyway, yes, fantastic. That would be lovely if we could bring a few things to the table. And obviously, I've got in mind, there's a lady who does a lot of recycling of fabrics, clothing and or for other uses. And I think we could really do with maybe having a show along, there was a big television program, I believe, or film made called The Cost of It, that was all about, where clothing is made and how it comes to be in super shops, and the cost to the communities that are making it. And obviously that film did bring about quite a bit of change, but still we should never turn our backs on these things. Thank you very much, Tim.
Okay, we'll see you again next time.
Excellent. Thank you very much.